Thank you so much. Jobs seems to be such a large part of people returning from being incarcerated and returning to society. Are you aware of programs, and what is your vision for jobs for people who have been in prison?
I'll be honest, like, Ceasefire has, to my knowledge, has hired more than 300 ex-offenders for the past maybe 10 years. As far as I know, it's the only program that's hired that many people. And out of the 100%, out of the 300 plus ex-felons, you've had maybe about 1.2%, if I'm mistaken, that actually, didn't last or they went back to prison. The program does have some support system. They have a lot of training, but we do need more jobs. We need more programs like Ceasefire. At the same time, like, there isn't enough programs out there that are actually hiring ex-offenders. And those that are, they're factory jobs or minimum wage jobs. And if you think about it, a lot of the guys that come out of prison, they have families. They have 2, 3, 4 kids. And so when they're making, barely minimum wage, if they're lucky, how can they really sustain a family and then, actually move forward? So I wish there was other programs, and I myself, and maybe I could share a bit more about that, but I myself, I'm finding ways of coming out here and advocating for not only behalf of this film and Ceasefire, but other initiatives that I've been involved with. And more than anything else, like, this film, what it actually shows is, the disparity and how there is a lot of hope, and there's people that want to do good, want to change, but unfortunately we don't have what you call social capital sometimes.
And this is something that Eddie and I have talked about a lot, and you see in the film at that scene towards the end of the National Guard scene when Eddie actually talks about, it's the thing I love about Eddie. He's always asking questions, and so, he's asking that question, is this just a Band-Aid? I mean, he looks and sees all the people who need jobs. And when you think about the numbers, I mean, in Chicago alone, every year for the past 5 years, there have been 20 to 25,000, mostly men, returning from prison to 5 neighborhoods in Chicago. Pretty astonishing numbers, and needless to say, especially in these times, jobs are few, and they're very difficult to find, especially if you've got a felony in your background.
Your outreach with the charter school was very impressive, and I really commend you for being so involved with those children at a young age, where it does make an impression on them. And I'm interested in learning whether or not that program was able to expand. Have you gone to any other charter schools? Have you had any connections with the Chicago public schools in a similar light?
Well, because I am an ex-felon, it's very hard to actually get into schools. That's one thing. Some of the programs that I've been involved with CPS has been because it was principal, under their own discretion, have allowed me to come in. And really, it's also been because of the, I put in my work, I feel at least that I've earned that. And so, with the school in Amnesty, I just visited them last week, as a matter of fact. Most of the kids are graduating already and moving into high school. And they're really good kids for the most part. Working with that group, some of them were at-risk youth, but the interesting part about this group, or thing about this group, is that they were already involved in trying to make change. They were already proactive, and so they wanted to know more about how they could actually help. But in doing so, they've had all these comments, and they had all these thoughts that they had about what they're seeing. And one of the interesting part about it is that nobody was really there to process what they were going through, what they were seeing. The instructors there, to some extent, feel that they're disconnected. Sometimes because of a cultural differences or race, but the teachers themselves, they have vested interest in the school and their students. So they're trying to also find ways how they could help their students. And so we came up with this art project. They don't have an art program there; they still don't. But this after-school program is still there. And so every so often I'll come in as a guest speaker and just talk to them, just to kind of reconnect with them and see how they're doing, what's going on in their lives. About 6 of the students that you see in that film, that part, I'm in constant communication. I hear from them at least 2 or 3 times a week. Most of it is text messages. but there is still, you know, so I mentioned this because of this. The last thing that I want to do with a lot of kids that I work with, particularly at that age, they already have too many people coming in and out of their lives. So I don't want to be the person that's going to be constantly coming in and out. So I want to show consistency. And I have been working with other schools around the area a little bit. But most of the kids that I work in that area are more at risk. They're more already, in the beginning stages of being involved in a gang, or they're already involved in a gang. But I do art initiatives. As a matter of fact, this Friday, I started another art initiative where we're doing a mural in the neighborhood. And, there's times where I'm able to get a small stipend or a grant, and I'm able to, pay them $50 or $100 for, maybe 20 hours worth of work per student. So that's the extent of that.
My question is for Alex. I was wondering, how did you get people to be so candid and emotional on camera? I just was amazed at what you could capture with a camera rolling.
Well, I think a couple of things. I think really in the end our access in this film had everything to do with Eddie, Amina, and Kobe. They were our guides, and so once they felt comfortable with us, people really followed their lead. There's no question we would never have gotten onto that porch with Flamo had it not been for Kobe. We would have never gotten into that funeral home had it not been for Amina. We never would have gotten to the cemetery with Vanessa and her family had it not been for Eddie. And so really, I think in the end, it was really trying to earn the trust of Eddie and the others. Maybe Eddie, you can speak to sort of how that worked. Eddie's talked, and I hope I'm not disclosing anything about how in some ways working on this film was kind of therapeutic for him, cathartic, because, he talked a lot about things that he had been ruminating about over the years. And I had some history of the program because I had spent 3 months working on the New York Times Magazine piece, and so I knew a lot of the guys around the table. I actually did not know Eddie, but I knew some of the people Eddie worked with, and they had introduced me to him. And I think probably the other thing, I think it was really important both to Steve and myself, and this I think is a sensibility that he and I share, is that, we recognize that we're out there in the communities, that it's really kind of a privilege, that we're there at the invitation of the people we're filming. And so we feel that it's really incumbent on us that we be absolutely honest and straight and direct about what we're doing. And so whenever we would encounter people through Eddie, Amina, and Kobe, we would tell them up front about what we were doing, about what our intentions were, as best we could, because of course, we don't fully know what's going to unfold that day and over the course of the coming weeks. And so that was really important to us. And we also had an agreement with the main principals that they could look at a rough cut of the film before we completed editing.
You, the gentleman right here, have a question.
Hello. I had a question.